My name is George Colina, and I am the Chief of Police for the City of Miami Police Department. I'm ultimately responsible for the safety of the residents, visitors, and merchants of the City of Miami. My predecessor did an excellent job in running the police department. What I would like to do is go out and be more visible and engaged with the community. So I have a strong Deputy Chief of Police that will assist me in running the day-to-day of the police department, which hopefully will allow me to go out and participate with community groups, community partners, merchants, resident citizens at a much broader scale. As Assistant Chief, one of the things that I wanted to do, which I've carried over as now Chief of Police, is to interact more with the community we serve. So whether it's community roll calls, community meetings, business merchant groups is one of the biggest things. When I was the Assistant Chief of Field Operations, I wanted to make sure that I was accessible to the public, not just to the policemen, but to the public. So that's, there's two elements to that. One is what is our level of preparedness as a police department. So we train our officers, something that's called alert training, which essentially deals specifically with an active shooter. And so if you're dispatched to an active shooter call, how do you handle that? And we've seen in the past across the country, there's been police departments that have handled it in different ways. Here in the City of Miami, the first officers that are on the scene are to engage the individual. The idea is to obviously get them to stop killing people and turn their attention to you. And so we train our officers that way. We offer active shooter training to organizations, groups, schools. And so we've gone recently, for example, at the Perez Museum. We went over and offered them training. We will be offering training to the Boys Club, which is over in Coral Way. And so we're trying to be as proactive as we can in terms of preparing our officers and preparing the public. Now, in terms of prevention, since the Parkland incident, we've asked our officers to please go by the schools as often as they can during their tour of duty. So if you're an officer, you have a specific area that you patrol. If in that area there's a school, part of your duty is to patrol that school while you're not on a call, just to increase the presence at the schools. And then, of course, I'm also working with the Miami-Dade County School Board Police to make sure that we collaborate on initiatives as well. People often do not want to make this a political statement, but there's no way around it. I think, you know, obviously things like bump stocks are not reasonable. That a bump stock is a piece of equipment used to put on a rifle that turns it from a semi-automatic to an automatic weapon. I don't think that it's appropriate. As Chief of Police, I need to protect my policemen, and when there's combat weapons out in the street, my policemen essentially are outgunned. I don't find that to be reasonable, where combat-style weapons are so easily accessible.
So bump stock should not be accessible?
I do not believe that they should, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Goodness, there's a lot of things, really. I mean, we need to communicate better with public health officials. We need to communicate better with every agency that may have some interaction with someone who can be mentally disturbed. You know, clearly you're not right if you're going to go somewhere and massacre people, especially students. Something clearly is not right with that person. We need to all kind of be on the same page of how do we address this problem, because this, unfortunately, is not an isolated incident. You know, I mean, this has happened now countless times across the country. So recently, I've met with both primarily Secret Service, and they have a unit, elements, that will help us investigate identity fraud cases, especially when there's a federal nexus, which oftentimes there is. The biggest challenge is with those kind of cases is that perhaps your identity was stolen here in Miami, but then someone uses a credit card in South Carolina, and then they purchase something in Naples, Florida, and we have that conflict of who has jurisdiction and who's ultimately responsible for investigating That's something that I hope to be able to not allow that to be an obstacle for us. If I'm working with a federal agency, those things become less complicated. I think people have to be, especially businesses, extremely careful who they share their information with.
Okay.
I think that when they hire new employees, those employees, quite honestly, should be limited to what they have access to in terms of the business's information until you have an opportunity to establish a relationship with that individual. In other words, those employees, new employees, need to be vetted, not just prior to hiring them, but even after you hire them, until there's more trust built. And then certainly always be mindful of the information you give out, whether it's over the phone or whether it's online. These criminals are very clever. They'll send you something that looks like, you know, you have a deal. Oh, we want to do business with you, and it sounds great. Just give us your information, and that's where they get started. It sounds easy to say something like, hey, let's, you know, try to leave your ego at the door.
Okay.
What happens is that, you know, policemen are like anybody else. You know, you wear a uniform, and so people will see you a certain way, but you're just a person, and you have feelings, and you have families, and you're affected by what you see on TV. You're affected by what happens in your household. You're affected by what's going on with your children's lives. And so it's difficult to try to separate all those things then when you go out and to deal with the public. When the public says things that are hurtful to you, you feel that, because you feel as a person, if I come out and I want to serve you and I want to be a good public servant, why are you treating me this way? Sometimes people will be angry with law enforcement. They'll see something that happened in South Carolina, for example, some horrific event involving law enforcement. Then I'll come to work here and someone will be angry about that, and they'll treat me a bad way. And, you know, I'm just a person, and I'll think, well, why are you speaking to me that way? But ultimately, if you keep that philosophy of, well, let me be the better person, let me take the high road, let me do the right thing, you have a better chance of understanding that that person also has a million issues, and maybe that's why they're responding. Somebody has to be the bigger person and not take it personal and remain professional. And that person should be on our side, because we're the ones that are tasked with protecting and serving the community.
So